The journey we're taking is the journey within you. Everybody has their own story and their own journey to share. Every journey conceals another journey within its lines, the path not taken and the forgotten angle. Listen to the stories from others sharing their triumphs and struggles that led them to where they are today. Welcome to the journey within you. And today I have a special guest, Kristin, and she is a coach, a transformation coach, a Christian encourager. And when I heard that, that just kind of lit me up inside because encouragement, who doesn't need encouraging today? In the world that we live in, life is hard. And any moment that we can be encouraged or be an encourager is so vital, right, to our being. So today, I want to welcome you, Kristin, and I want you just to take us through your journey and tell us a little bit about your story and how it's led you to where you are today.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Laura, for having me on the show. I'm excited to join you today. So I guess I would just start with I grew up in Virginia Beach, Virginia, about 20 minutes from the coast, and I am one of five kids. I'm the fourth, so I have three older brothers and a younger
Oh,
sister. And so faith was always something where we went to church, and I grew up actually Catholic. And so while church was important to us and we had Bibles, it wasn't as much like we had weekly Bible study. And so that was sort of my background, my foundation. But I could tell by the time I went to college, I really had an interest more than people around me in faith and Christianity. And I could just tell God was pursuing me. So in college, I actually took quite a few religion classes, Christianity class, ethics classes, but this was the thing that was kind of drawing my interest. But my actual degree, my undergraduate degree was in political science
ah,
and international relations because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer until
wow.
I learned what lawyers actually did.
Ugh.
Right. And I hold on here. I'm not meant to be a review contracts and paper pusher type thing. It was
Right,
just when I
right.
realized that your days were spent more reviewing and then writing these long things. I liked what learning about law, but I realized I actually didn't want to be somebody that spent my days doing that.
Yeah.
And so I had this little prompt from God, but I really never stepped into that in any sort of big way. I didn't step into a ministry role. I didn't pursue seminary or anything like that, but I always had that interest.
Hmm.
And so after college, I moved home, started dating my husband, who's, his boyfriend, now my husband. But my first job had nothing to do with my background, like so many of us. It was
Yeah.
actually it was for a small specialty foods company. That led me to what I did for a lot of my career, which is I helped head up their e-commerce their
Hmm.
website. And so the company we worked with to do that I ended up working for them. I was hired over by them. And so I worked for them for 8 years. But that's what got me into online technology, online
Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah.
And so as these pieces fall into place, right? What we did before prepares us for the next thing.
Hmm.
And so at that time, by then I had two kids. I was married, had two children, and I stepped out of that and started a online parenting and early educational website with my mom. And so we started that in 2008. It still exists, but it's kind of on the back burner. So we don't do a lot of new stuff with it. And then when I was doing that, starting that, I had my third child. So we did that. And I would say until about 2016, I did some in-person workshops. So I would train businesses on my background. Then I was also building this company with my mom. What I started finding, so I would do, we did iPhone games. We did, workbooks for kids, for
Oh,
preschool and
cool.
kindergartners, all
Yeah.
these things, ebooks with Barnes and Noble. But as we were doing all this and some things were going really well, although financially things were kind of up and down, I started having more of this desire or call to step into one of the gifts that I always had which was listening, people confiding in me, encouraging people. And so the pull started getting much stronger as my kids were getting, to middle school and then a little older. I just I felt very fragmented in my life. I
Mhm.
felt like my faith was over here somewhere, but I always had these jobs prior to having my business where
Yeah.
you didn't really talk about your faith in your work so much.
Mm.
And so what kept happening is I kept thinking, I feel like I'm these three or four parts of Kristin. Kristen working on the business with my mom,
Yeah.
Kristen feeling like she wants to be an encourager, my past technology background. And I just felt like this needs to come together.
Somebody's got to blend. Yeah.
I need to figure out a way to make this come together. And so I started doing some more writing. This was, a handful of years back, more faith writing or more just writing, that encouraging writing, as a parent and those sort of things. Anyways, so that was kind of on my heart. And I wasn't expecting to take a different job, but an old colleague of mine from, that I worked with 20 years ago had reached out. And so I ended up taking another detour. And then I worked as a smaller company's marketing technology director for 2.5 to 3 years. But while I was there, I had already bought my microphone prior to that position, but
Mhm.
I just didn't feel like the timing was right since I was committed to working for someone. And so after a year there, I knew, that God wanted me to step back into my own work again. But
Mhm.
of course, the time wasn't right. So I waited another year and a half to approach them and say, look, I'd really like to step out and I'd be happy to still consult with you, for limited hours. And so that's what I did. I stepped out and I started my first podcast
Wow.
called Building a Life You Love. And then 6 months to 8 months later, I started my second podcast, which was Faith Fueled Woman. Really,
Oh.
it was this slow call for me, for God to say to me, like, you need to show up and you need to
Mhm.
speak into women's lives and encourage them in their lives to step into what I have for them. And so that is what
Mm.
I'm doing now.
I love that so much. So do you still have both podcasts going or
I do.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That's big. I know
Yeah.
with me with one, I'm like, oh, that's a lot to do, but that God gives you the strength and the will when you step into whatever he's calling you, because if you hold back, like you said, you kept feeling that pull, but you knew the timing kept coming and it
Right.
did, like it did for you. So now you're full time at home.
Yeah. My office is at my house. That's correct. And yeah, and my kids are older now. So they're most
Yeah.
of the time, two are in college and or just finishing, and then one's in high school. And so, they're like,
Oh,
no one's home at this point. Everybody's
yeah.
off working and
Yeah.
doing whatever. So yes,
So you got your
absolutely.
time there. Are you still in Virginia then
I
working and everything?
am.
You never left the
Yeah, I mean,
area, huh?
I moved for college and things like that, but then I
Yeah.
was started dating my boyfriend at the time who was from this area as well. And so
Oh gosh, yeah.
yeah, so
So you
we
wound
we
up coming
stayed
from the
here.
same area. That's cool
That's
too.
right.
And how
Yeah.
long have y'all been married?
We've been married for 25 years.
That's
Actually
beautiful.
this month.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
That's so good. That's so good. I love hearing, we're 27 years and
Yeah.
it's just beautiful to hear couples that have stayed together and worked hard at their marriage because it's not
Mhm.
easy, right?
Right.
It
Well,
takes
yeah, and
work.
that's absolutely. And that we all know people, lots of people that are not still together for so many
Yeah.
reasons. And so
Yeah.
yes, I think that that's a fortunate and also a blessing, because that's not the case for everybody. And many times it's not someone's want what they want. It's
Right,
just a
right. No,
situation where the other
I mean, I
person's
didn't want a divorce either.
yeah,
This is my second marriage and it's not something you want. I'm
that's right.
married to
Yeah,
stay married, but
yeah, it
it wasn't
happens.
to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had to get moved out. I had to move. So I know it was right. And God was with me through that.
Mhm.
It took time to build back up and encouragement from
Yes.
Christian people and strong women in my life because that's so important too. I think, you're being that catalyst for women that are struggling. And I think, and if you're correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be in the 40 to 60 age range that start struggling
Yeah.
harder
I think so too.
because life is changing amongst them, either divorce, kids are moving out, all the things. And they're like finding themselves like, now what do I do? Who am I? Because you've been
That's
so focused on being the mom, the wife, all the things.
that's
And
right.
now it's like, now what do I do? And they go into that, am I worthy to do anything?
Yeah. That's exactly what happens. I mean, it can happen at any time, and we can have this awakening or reawakening at any point. But I absolutely agree with you. As we get into 40 or above, yes, I think more people start questioning, like, hold on, things have slowed down a bit in some area of my life, or all of a sudden I have enough room to breathe and I can realize, hold on, I've been caring for excuse me, everyone else. And I now have a little bit of time that I realize
Hmm.
I don't even know what I like anymore, or
I
that I've
know.
lost interests, or
Yeah.
so I think that's a very common and expected thing that can happen to us,
Hmm.
at whatever age. It depends if you have children and how old they are,
Oh, yeah. You
or
can get
married.
there
But
too. They think they
yeah,
can't do anything else but raise their children and be the wife. But although God gives you talents to use, elsewhere.
Absolutely.
But I know that I buried mine. I kept them buried because I was we had our own business, and so I felt like I had to put all my effort into that, or it would disappoint him as my husband.
Right.
But it wouldn't. That was just my thoughts, you know.
Right.
And then when things changed for us in August, pivoting, I was like, okay, Lord, I know I have talents that I have buried down inside.
Yeah.
Please help me find those and release them and use them for your good. And how he has blessed me because I opened that door.
Yeah.
I didn't keep it, I haven't kept it closed.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things, I think is people don't realize or don't think about this. It's we need to be who God uniquely made us to be. He didn't make me have an interest in Christian writing. He didn't make me like to travel. In other words, there's all these things
Hmm.
about me uniquely and about you uniquely that
Hmm.
are different than our friends or some of the
Right.
things. So sometimes I think we think those are selfish things, but they're not. He
Mm.
designed us with interests, with desires, with passions, with things that break our heart. And those are the things that he's going to use to, let us have an impact in the world.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because you love to travel and I love taking pictures. I'm not a professional photographer at this
Oh, but
point.
I love picture taking too.
Right. And so,
Yeah.
but not everybody does. I'm always
Yeah.
the one that takes
Yeah.
600 pictures on a
Yeah.
trip. And
Yeah.
that's something that's not everybody's desire or
No.
passion or interest. And so we have to pay attention to those things. And I think
Hmm.
people think, oh, I'm, like I said, being selfish or, that's not really what God has for me. But actually, I think it is often those little signals that help
Yeah.
us to see how God wants to use us in many different ways.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I am the picture taker. They're always like, Laura, take it. She'll have them. We'll just get
Yeah,
them from
me
her.
too. Yes.
Anywhere we go, all the girls were all at some event and I'm snapping the pictures. But I just want
Yeah,
those memories. But and I think it's not just for me. I'm making them for them. I
that's
get
right.
so excited to see them in their place, taking bravery to be where we are in that moment
Yes.
and to take that picture so they have that. They're like, I did that. I was there,
Mhm. That's right.
so that's my main purpose, I think, too. And I'm already thinking I leave Thursday for San Diego and I'm like, I need a camera probably to go with me because these women, I want to capture some
Yeah.
pictures for them so
Yeah.
that they'll have that because they're going to be nervous. They're not going to be thinking about it. And it's just a small entity of us. There's only be five of us and it's going to be
That's
really impactful. And so I'm like, that would be so awesome to capture those things for them.
yeah.
Um, but stepping into what you're called, sometimes people struggle with that. Like you said, they think they're being selfish because they're thinking big or thinking something out of the realm of what other people think they are about because
That's right.
they've lived a life for so long in this who I am, but really not letting out who they are, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I think one thing too that I've learned is that a lot of women, because of what all we go through and maybe our career choices, or maybe we stayed home with our kids, whatever it might be, we stopped listening, at least loudly to ourselves or to our intuition. We stopped listening to the little voice,
Yeah.
like just even deciding, well, where do you want to go to dinner? And I'm not saying you should always be the one that picks or anything,
No.
but if you always defer, that's
Yeah.
just a little baby signal that you're not speaking up for what
For
what
yourself.
you might
Yeah.
like. And
Yeah.
so I think those are the kind of things I sometimes have talked about, date yourself, like learn to date yourself. And,
Mm,
and
I
obviously I
love
don't
that.
actually, but I remember when I was 16 or 17, I was waiting tables. The two early jobs I had was waiting tables and then lifeguarding at the beach as a
Yeah.
ocean lifeguard. But when I would be in between shifts, I'd be 25 minutes away from my home each way. So I would just have to go grab something to eat. And I remember the first time I went to a restaurant and I was by myself.
Uh-huh.
I always had people around me, right? A family
Yeah.
of 6, I was
Yeah.
never.
Always. Yeah.
And so I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, it was intimidating. But then I realized, okay, this isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And then as I've been older, if I've been at a conference by myself, sometimes people at conferences, but sometimes if it's a big one
Hmm.
and I've never
Yeah,
been, I
you
didn't.
don't. You're going, yeah, into it. I
So I
know.
just ate by myself the first night, before the event starts. And I realized that when I'm actually alone, when I shop alone, when I pick a book by myself, when
Yeah.
I I could choose differently because no one's beside me saying, I like the red dress better. And
Yeah.
not that I don't want my husband or my friend's opinion sometimes, but
Right.
sometimes
Right.
I want to have chosen without anybody else whispering in my
Hmm.
ear. And so
Hmm.
that's why I say sometimes to women to date yourself, learn what you actually like and what you enjoy.
Oh, I like that because we always talk about dating your spouse,
Right.
and how
Yeah.
important
And
that is
that's
in your
important too.
marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then to sit and think about date yourself. And I'm like, I like that because I don't think about doing that. I mean, I'm always thinking about everybody else
That's
and
right.
doing for everybody else and letting them help choose or make, what do you think about this? We're all times shooting stuff back and forth, which is great. I mean, don't ever stop doing that, but
Right.
take the courage to say, this is what I want and this is what I'm doing
That's
instead of
right.
like, what are your thoughts on this, and just put it out there.
That's
Um,
right.
like choosing the colors and all those things. I did that with this house that we moved into in August. I picked the paint colors, didn't tell nobody.
Mhm.
That's a first.
Yeah.
Usually I'm like, okay, y'all got to help me with this. I just picked
Right.
them. And it was
You liked
everybody,
them.
my husband loved them. I mean, he was
Right.
like, he's not always so caring about, like all the details like that. Most guys
Mhm.
aren't, but he was like, gosh, you did good. And my realtor did say, well, your office may be a little dark because that's a darker color. I was like, nope, that's what I want. And I like it. It's me. And
That's
so
right.
it flowed, she's like, it really does look good. So taking the courage to do those kind of things. And it's baby steps, like you said, walking
Right.
into a restaurant, and sitting down by yourself and having a lunch or a breakfast. I love having a breakfast and coffee and
Yeah.
just a brisk morning of something. Something I stepped into this last couple of weeks was before I had a home with a very long driveway where I could walk and nobody really saw me. It was, by myself. And now I live in a neighborhood and it's an older
Mhm.
neighborhood, beautiful area to walk, but I couldn't get up the courage to start walking these streets.
Yeah.
What? Fear of people going to watch me or see me? People don't care. But it was all in my head. Like I just like couldn't do it. But the first day I did it, I was like, how stupid was this? This is
Right.
great. I love this, and
I
I'm
know
in my
exactly what you're talking about. But yeah,
in
it's
my own
true.
pace. Yeah.
We
I
get
thought,
these things in our
man,
heads.
why did I
What's
hold
that?
back
I know. And what's that saying? It's something like people aren't thinking about you either ever or nearly as much as you think because they're busy thinking about their own
about
things.
their
Like
stuff?
look, we do make these stories up in our head, like, or even if you're sitting by yourself at a restaurant, people will be looking at
Everybody's
you like,
watching
why is
me.
she by herself? It's like, you do not need to worry about that. And they're
Yeah.
probably not. They're probably thinking, wow, I wish I could do that.
Well, I know that when I see people walking out here, I see them. But
Yeah,
it's like, kudos to them for walking
that's
first in
right.
this
That's
heat,
right.
and that's what I think. And then there was one lady that I've been dying to meet because I think they probably think we're hermits here in this house because my husband does have an illness and we're not out a
Yeah,
lot. So I was the day that I decided to take off on my street, they come down the hill and I was like, I get to meet her. This was my
right.
day to finally
That's
meet my
right.
neighbor, say hello. I am alive. We are good
Right.
neighbors. We want to meet our neighbors, but I just that's another thing I do. I love encouraging women to use their voice.
Yes,
That is God gave us a voice, each of us a unique
that's right.
voice. And don't ever be ashamed of it, even through the struggles that we've all
Mhm.
gone through, because we
Yeah,
have. It dampers our voice. We
mhm.
withdraw,
That's
but
right.
find that one where, especially using your voice with God, and sit down and have that conversation with Him
Mm.
and let Him know you're struggling in using your voice. And He'll give you the courage to speak up, to step out into what you know that you've been dying to do, but yet afraid what others will think. You know, I mean, it's
Yeah,
such a blessing.
absolutely. I mean, that's a good example of that is when I started the first podcast, there is a faith element, but it's not a faith, it's not under, religion or
Right,
Christianity.
right.
But my second one is under Christianity. And when I first started it, I didn't tell it, it was actually had a different name. It was called Spark of Faith originally. But I didn't tell a soul. I didn't tell a single person. I just put it up there
Yeah.
because I felt like God was kind of calling me to do that. Then when I finally said, okay, I'm gonna like take that next step, I got more comfortable. I'm gonna share it more, change the name, in which it's been for I think 2 years. But to be honest with you, I was and still get a little uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
sharing certain of the faith topics because I feel like we a lot of us have lots of people we know that are not maybe do not align in the same they may not be Christian, they may be Jewish or something else, or maybe their faith denomination is different,
Mm-hmm.
so they may not align with my guest.
Right.
And so I do have to be really careful just to be faithful in what God's calling me to and
Mm-hmm.
not worry about what someone thinks or their
Yeah.
opinions.
Yeah.
Or question myself like I haven't at this point gone to seminary. I'm not a minister type
Right,
person.
right. But
And so
you're a
we have to
child
be
of
careful.
God. You're
That's
a
right.
child of God, and
That's
He's
right.
given you the wisdom and the courage to step into that.
That's
He'll
right.
carry you through it. And that's the thing too. I was always like my podcast, it's faith-based. I mean,
Yeah.
I have people on probably like you said of different denomination, and we may not always align exactly
Right.
in how we believe, but they do know of Jesus, but it's how they get to him is a
Right.
different walk, maybe. And
That's right.
so I hate the word always religion, or
Yeah,
I don't know. I shouldn't say hate. That's not a nice word, but I just like knowing that I'm a child of God and
that's
that
right.
I know when I leave this earth, I'll be with him. And that's the most important thing to me. Now, if I can share that and express that with other people and bring them to know and make, to know the Lord and make an impact that way, that's why I'm here,
Right.
for him. And so that he shines through me. And it's scary, like you said, you don't,
Yeah.
you don't want people to misinterpret or think that you think you're know it all, because I can't
Yes,
quote
that's right.
scripture left and right. It's got to be in front of me. I got to read it. And I'm a preacher's
Right.
kid, but I
Right.
don't, I did plenty of those Bible drills, but I don't know scripture word
Yeah.
for word. I'm
Same.
in
Yeah.
it every day, but I have
Mhm.
to have it in front of me to be able to share
Yes.
it with someone.
Yes.
And he leads me to the right scripture. I know that, but I applaud you for stepping into your faith and,
Mhm.
launching that other podcast without worrying about what other people are going to say and then sharing it. I love that. What's it called again? Say the name.
Well, it's faith-fueled woman.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
And sometimes recently, and I'm also trying to step out of my comfort zone. I mean, it's a constant thing, right? And
Yes.
both of us
Yes.
have done
Growth.
this.
Yeah.
And so when I first did it, my episodes, don't get me wrong, we talk about all different types of things and with different types of guests, but I still think I'm not it's not a political oriented show or anything like that.
Mm-mm.
But
No.
I have found that I was not talking about certain topics, and not that I want to talk about every topic, but I was finding that maybe I was afraid.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, and I'm not saying this is the one I was afraid of, but in this week I have a podcast episode which I've never covered. We've talked about marriage on a handful
Yeah.
of them,
Yeah.
with different guests, but we're talking about intimacy in
Mm.
sex and marriage, in Christian
Mm-hmm.
marriage, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily line with everything my guest says. She's younger and has a different, but I almost was afraid to publish it because
Yeah.
I
What are
thought,
people going to
well,
think?
what, yeah, that, and I'm like, well, she is a little bold sometimes. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
aligns with the Bible, but she's kind of talking against maybe some of the purity culture. I mean, in marriage,
Yeah.
not in, but
Yeah.
still, in which I think that's a good thing. But I'm not as versed in that, and I don't
Yeah.
cover that topic as much, so it was a little uncomfortable me talking about it, but thinking I'm
Yeah.
going to share this with everyone. So I just try to keep, but I still thought it was an important topic.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my thing, is I have to keep kind of challenging myself. Like, is this something that I think could benefit some listeners? And do I want to bring it on? But I have to push myself sometimes to say,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want it to only be the same
Right.
topics and
Right. And
testimony.
where you're just surfacing, you're not
And
digging
so I'm
deep.
like, okay, it's
Mm-hmm.
okay, because like they say, if you're vanilla, in other words, if you don't have anybody that never says one negative thing about you, or the thing, not that I want negativity,
Yeah, no, but
then
if it
you're
does,
not, you're maybe not taking a real stand. And
yeah,
so, you know what I mean? And so I
I
have to
like
be
that.
careful to
Yeah.
not be vanilla like that. Like, not to
Yeah.
say, I'm for everybody, because none of us
Yeah.
are for
No,
everybody,
no. And that's something too. I don't try to use the word like universe and all those things because that's for them to feel that way. I don't have to
Right.
say it, if they
That's
need to
right.
to relate to that. I'm Jesus. Not I am
Yes.
Jesus, but I am of him and I talk of him. And
Yes.
that's where I want to stand in that when I do. And like I always say too, like in anything on social media or whatever, click, click, click. You don't have to be a part of it if it
That's
offends
right.
you or you don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
But I think if you just take a moment and listen, you'll see how we're talking about what we are and how it can relate to you in your life at some point. And sex is a part of your life in a marriage, and that's,
Right.
I could talk big on that for a while because I mean, I've been married 27 years
Hmm.
and um our marriage has been beautiful and it was, a very intricate part of our life, sex, and it was been to me great because my first marriage it was like being seduced and raped all the time. And I'm just
Yeah.
being honest, it was
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
And this time I really understood what God intended it to be.
Yes.
And then when my husband got colon cancer and chemo, that started stealing that from us. It
That's
it
right.
changed things. But what it brought me to see was our whole marriage wasn't based on that,
Right.
right? And
That's
so
right.
many marriages are today.
Yeah.
With young people, that's their whole realm. They don't understand a true marriage. Their marriage is all about sex. And when that leaves or something happens there, they divorce. They're done. They're out of there.
Hmm.
I I have a man that loves me more than anything in the world. I love him more than anything in the world. And we don't have that anymore. We hadn't in years. But it's
Right.
not the realm of our marriage. God gave us those beautiful years of that. And I know I'm getting off on a thing, but you made me think
That's
about it.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it made me realize that I've been so blessed and I got to experience it. And now I have the true one, but still beside me, even if we don't have that, we joke
Yeah.
about it, we laugh about it now.
You're right though. I mean, and there's different seasons. Like we have very close friends that's husband just went through. I think he had colorectal cancer. So,
Mm-hmm.
and same. I mean, in other words, I mean, if anyone's going through things, you can have times where the drugs and stuff, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's things that
Mm-hmm.
don't allow you to do certain things. It's just because of the medications. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
part of the story of what you're trying to explain, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
when someone's going through medical treatments or really heavy duty drugs in their bodies, they have to be careful with those
Well,
things.
it
And so
takes that
that's
stuff away. I mean,
it does
it
because they
messes with
can't
it.
the
Yeah.
chemo drugs you can't have go to
Mm-hmm.
anybody else, right? Basically.
Mm-hmm.
So just for anybody who doesn't understand, like there's
Yeah.
health related, but it's also medicines and all the others, the
Mm-hmm.
treatments people are getting that there may be seasons,
Mm-hmm.
where that's not possible to
Yeah.
your point. So yeah, that's amazing that you shared it because you're right. In the episode I share, she talks about, much like you said about your first marriage, like she talks about how if certain things are going on, then that is not appropriate and that is not what God intended for marriage,
Right. Right.
your intimacy. So,
Yeah.
I applaud her for being so clear and bold in what she
Mm-hmm.
talks about because that's her main
And making you
focus.
uncomfortable because that gave you growth, right?
Well, yeah, and I was more uncomfortable because I was afraid of what people would think,
Right.
not because of
Right.
me talking
No,
about it.
no, personally. That's no, I didn't
Yeah,
mean that
yeah,
either. But yeah, but it gave you growth because your courage to do it and go
yeah,
ahead forward with it and
yeah,
whatever
yeah,
people think.
absolutely.
Okay. Like I said, they can shut it off. They
That's
don't
right.
have
If
to
this is not
listen.
for them, then they're
Yeah.
not ready for it, and that's okay. They can keep
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what have you got next coming on your podcast?
Oh, after that, oh gosh, I have I mean, I think I have five more that are scheduled, but one a really good one coming out next week is with author Kathy Izzard. She's from North Carolina, but she's written five books, but her most recent book is called Trust the Whisper. But
Oh,
she actually years ago helped raise money for the first homeless shelter where they housed 100 people to live.
ah,
And so, but it's all her stories are all about the dots that connected. Like she calls them God dots, like instead of
yeah.
God wings.
Yeah.
But it's a really beautiful story. And basically, this homeless man that had written a book with the people that kind of took him in, they were speaking at an event where she was at. She wasn't doing all the shit. She worked in a soup kitchen once a week. She was a graphic designer. And she gave him a tour of this building. And at the end, she
Mm.
said, well, he stopped talking 20 minutes in. And she goes, I didn't really know why. And she was kind of like, okay, that's it. And she was thinking he would be impressed. And he just said, well, you're going to take me upstairs now. And she said, well, it's just the offices up there. And he goes, there's no beds. And she said, no, we're just a day ministry. And he said, you do all this good and you let them loose at night into all the bad. And I just
Mm.
got goosebumps. But
Oh, I did too.
right, she it kind of hit her that question
Mm.
and it wouldn't leave her. And so
Mm.
within that next year, she ended up taking a position that didn't even exist that they created. She had no experience with it and started heading up for the soup kitchen to
Oh my
raise the
gosh.
money to build it. So, anyways, it's a beautiful. Everything she's done is
Oh,
pretty
I can't
amazing.
wait to listen to that
Yeah,
one.
so there's some really good ones coming up, but that's the next one next week.
Oh, that's so good. Oh, there's so many people out there doing great things.
Yeah, that's true.
And again, they opened their door to listen. She heard him, you know? She heard
And
him.
I think that's one of the things, I'm learning through, doing my podcast, and
Yeah.
obviously probably you're learning it too, is two things. One, sharing these stories, sharing people's testimony, sharing what they're doing, what they're stepping into. So many of my guests have no background, just like I had not done
No.
podcasting before. Another woman that I interviewed months ago, she is a Christian fiction author, but she was a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
She's never written her life. And now she's written three books, at
Oh
least
my
three or
goodness.
and so, but she was feeling that call. And so I just want to encourage people, if you're feeling that
Hmm.
prompting, that whisper, it does not matter, as we know, if you don't have a past in that, he's going to use all your past,
Yeah.
but you will have what you need. Right. And so
Yeah.
just take the first little baby step, and that's what every one of us have done. We just took that first step. We just tried one little thing and then
Mhm.
kept moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I had one that she's had a podcast thought for 2 years.
Mhm.
Had so much information she's been gathering and doing and
Yeah.
prepping. And I said, it's time. So we launched today. I'm so
Awesome.
excited for her. I mean, she's got it and she's ready,
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
been ready, but just taking that baby step to go, boom, I'm doing it. No
That's
question.
right.
So when I start them in the coaching, I'm like, we're setting a date.
That's
There's
right.
no turning back once we set
Mhm.
the date. So that's the biggest thing as a person and you're doing it yourself. You don't always set the date. You just keep
That's right.
saying, it's coming. It's
That's right.
coming. And when my husband said start one, I was like, why? It was the
Right.
same thing. I'm like, why do I want to do that? And I did, but it was not where I really wanted it to go. So I held off. I started it, did probably, I don't know, 9 episodes maybe on my
Mhm.
own, took a break, and then came back with a whole new name and the
Yeah.
purpose because I knew God would be in it more so if I allowed him to work in it instead of me
Yeah.
trying to do self, self, self. And
That's
that's
right.
the thing. You just have to, sometimes you have to do that. But
That's right.
like a journey is not a straight path, right? It's a
No.
twist and turn and sometimes backwards, but you get there if you
That's right.
don't stop. Keep going.
Yeah, and I think you should expect there to be twists and turns, and you should
Hmm.
expect that you're going to tweak and change things. And I fully expect that to continue. On my other
Oh,
podcast,
yeah.
the first one, I've tried different names with different focuses like 4 times. I'm back to where I was originally
Oh,
started for like
really?
a long time, but well, because I went through a program, I did this thing, and they're like, "Oh, well, you have this emphasis in here," and so I'm like, "I'll try it," but I was like, "That's not where my heart's
It's
leading
not
me. That's
felt
not
it.
where God's
Yeah.
leading me." So I said, "No, that's not it. At least not for this."
Hmm.
So
You learn, you do know, and
absolutely,
that's again you taking back self and realizing
that's
what
right.
you truly know that he's calling you to do.
That's right.
This has been fun. I've been so glad to have you on here and learn. I will have everything in the show notes for everybody to get in touch with you. You do have, do you have books also, right?
Well, I don't have any. I have some workbooks people can download from my
Okay,
site.
gotcha.
I co-authored a book years ago, but I haven't released any new things that I have in progress. But yeah, so on my website, one thing that might be of interest to your audience is I have a um, reignite your passion workbook that's free to
Oh,
download from my
cool.
website. It just kind of
Yeah.
helps walk you through 10 different exercises
Uh-huh.
to really kind of get back in touch with yourself and with what God's calling you into.
Oh, great. That'll be awesome for them to have. And I love that you're making that available to them. Also, you have a coaching program, right?
I
As
do. I do some. I still have some one-on-one, even though I'm moving into a membership type
yeah, yeah.
program. And I do some podcast coaching as well. But yeah, so I have some coaching opportunities on my website as well. Yes.
Awesome. 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 So I have a stack of scripture cards that I keep here, and I just
Uh-huh.
love to shuffle them while we're talking. And whatever's on top is our scripture meant for us today.
I
And
love
it
that.
says, "The Lord bless you and keep you." Number 6:24. And I love that because He does. He blesses you and He keeps you close if you allow
Yeah.
Him to be a part of you.
Yeah.
And so another question I love to ask is, what is something you like to collect?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, for one, it's probably photos, right, that I
Yeah,
take.
yeah,
And then I think too, whenever we've gone to different beaches as our kids were growing up, or even if I'm just on a trip by myself, I usually take, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say take. I might grab a shell. I
yeah.
know some places they say not to, and I don't do it
Oh,
if
yeah,
it
yeah,
says
yeah.
not to, or even a rock if it's like in a stream or a river and we're
Yeah.
doing a hike. I'll just for a memory, I'll keep things like that from somewhere we went.
Yeah, I love that too. I've done that. And I've even gotten, when we had a little pond at our house, we traveled a lot with our business. And so we'd be in areas in the woods and I'd just get some different moss,
Oh
from a
yeah,
different state. And it was
yeah,
really neat to see how it would transport and grow and back
right,
in my state. And so little things like that, different rocks
yeah.
that were just unique, I would pick up and bring back and put around the pond.
I love that. Yeah, the only thing is when I go on a trip, I usually, if I have time and I happen upon a shop or a artisan somewhere, out at a market,
Hmm.
I will try to buy like a pair of earrings that they made or a
Oh,
ring or
yeah.
something or a bracelet that I can remember that place by.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't
Yeah.
happen every time, but a lot of
Oh,
times it
yeah, but
does.
sometimes you'll find something that hits
Yeah.
just right. Yeah, and you can wear
And
it
you're
and
like, oh,
use
this
it.
looks
Yeah.
fun. Then I can, every time I put them back on, I can remember that. So
That
I
moment.
do that as well. I like to do something like that.
I love that. And if we ever figure out how to save pictures without taking up so much space, now I've got them in the cloud and I've got them. I was
Yeah.
always told if you put them on a disk that they eventually fade off of there. I don't know how
Certain
true
types
that
of
is. Yeah.
Well, it depends on which type of disc it is, or you know
Okay.
what I'm saying. There used to be way
Yeah.
back floppy, and now DVD or CDs,
Oh, I used to
DVDs
have
have
them on the, yeah, I've got my CV. I used to have them on
way
those
back.
little floppy things. Yeah.
Those I think do for sure
Yeah.
go away, but I don't remember the lifespan of CDs and DVDs. Decent, but you're right, it might not be. I think somewhere on it it says on the packs like how
Oh,
long.
okay.
So there might be archival ones, but the point is, I'm with you. Is what do we do? How do we
Yeah.
keep them? And I guess the answer is we print the ones we love the most, right?
Exactly. But you
Don't
know
always keep
what? I have to say though, I used to print all the time. I was
them.
crazy and I'd have pictures everywhere or sitting beside the chair. And then this last time we had to move in November, I had so many frames. And I was told somebody, I was like, the girl that was helping me, I said, don't ever let me buy another frame. This is
Mhm.
crazy. And I'm
Yeah,
having to now, I don't have anywhere to put them. I couldn't,
that's
I had
right.
to be very selective what I brought here because we went from 4,000 to 1,000. So, I mean, very selective.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
then I have this whole box of pictures. And I finally I've distributed them all up to the kids of anything they were in. I was like,
yeah,
you've got a bag, you need to come get it because I can't keep them. And I hate
that's
it,
right.
but I can't. And then I've got this whole thing out in my building. I know what's going to happen to them. They're not going to last out there because of the heat, the cold.
Yeah,
And I'm like, okay, Lord, I have to release those because
yeah,
it's in my head, it's in my memory, it's in my heart most of all.
yeah.
It's so hard keeping the tangibles like that
I
and
know.
having the
You're
space
right.
sometimes, for
Mhm.
it. And releasing is also good for the soul. I will
Yeah,
say that it's been an awakening for me for sure this year and learning how to just let go. I had that memory. It was fantastic. I can hold on to it that way. Although I
that's
still
good.
have 13,000 pictures on my phone. And
I do too. Something like that.
yeah, yeah, good. Soul sisters and pictures.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much, Kristen, for being on my podcast today. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you for joining my podcast today. We all have a story to share. Each story has purpose and makes an impact to you, the listener, creating a journey with passion and purpose. The journey we're taking is the journey within you. Please share with others and subscribe below.